All right, we'll go ahead and get started today's call with Auburn Athletics Director Allen Greene. A couple of things real quick first. Please keep your phones on mute to eliminate background noise. When you're ready to ask a question, then feel free to unmute your phone. And also, when you ask a question, please state your name and affiliation if you don't mind. We'll go ahead and start with Allen with a few comments, then we'll open it up for questions. Allen?
Kirk, thank you for arranging this and moderating. Certainly, we all know that we are in unprecedented times in our country and in our world. I don't know how many times I've used the word unprecedented, but it's been more than I care to. To those on the call, I want to thank you for continuing to do your jobs in covering sport. I know it's got to be challenging for you as we think about the context of sport in the greater context of the things that we're going through in our own world and some of the struggles that people in our own country and our own communities are going through. As you all are fully aware, we are going through all of this on the fly. Someone used the term as I heard before, as we're flying an airplane while we're building it. So I tend to keep that in mind as we're going through decision making. And I have to give credit to our student athletes, to our coaches and to our staff. We're tremendously thankful to have university administration led by Dr. Gouge and tremendous leadership at the SEC office led by Greg Sankey. So I feel like although we don't quite know where these twists and turns are taking us, we have very competent leaders who are helping guide us all through this unique circumstance. The crisis, broadly speaking, is the epitome of teamwork. In our athletics department, we talk a lot about caring about someone else's success more than their own. This is that. This is we over me in the greater context. And success in battling this crisis can only be achieved by all of us pulling on the same rope at the same time with the same sense of urgency. So with that, I will open it up for questions and do the best I can to offer insights or answers to the best of my knowledge and based on where we are at 1:05, 1:04 p.m. on Friday afternoon.
Hi, Alan. It's Brian Matthews here. How are you?
Doing well, Brian.
Thank you. I'm glad to hear that. Just want to ask about budget issues and how not having an NCAA tournament and not having spring sports is going to affect y'all's bottom line.
Yeah, Brian, that's an excellent question. Something that we have been discussing just in terms of broader picture. We do not have a concrete answer on the budget impact. I think we all know and are preparing for some sort of a budget impact, but there's still a lot to unfold. Obviously, a lot has unfolded, and there's still more to unfold that's going to help give us a clear picture.
Alan, do you have any idea if it's going to be big, small, medium, or what are just your general thoughts on it?
In talking to our conference colleagues as they continue to have conversations with the folks at the NCAA, and I don't know how many of you were or heard Commissioner Sankey's teleconference, but if I can borrow some of his sentiments, is I don't know from our league perspective that it will be large per se. I know large and small or moderate are all relative speaking, but we do expect obviously there to be some sort of a financial impact.
Alan.
Thank you, Alan.
Alan, this is Philip Marshall. Does it have any impact on the plans going forward for the football facility, do you think?
Hey, Philip, that's a good question. Right now, we are full steam ahead on the football facility. And obviously, as things change on our campus and in our country and around the world, we'll audible as we see fit. But we have been given the directive to move forward full steam ahead.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Just wondering what your conversations were like, if any. I'm sure you've had some, obviously, with Pearl or the basketball team and the district tournament coming with the SEC tournament, the NCAA tournament, and just everything in that program regard.
Yeah, you were speaking. I couldn't really hear you. Tell me your name again. I think I understood the question.
Oh, it's Simone. This is Simone.
Oh, hey, Simone.
Hey there.
So I think you were asking about communications with either the basketball staff or student athletes. Is that correct?
Yeah, just the disappointment maybe that they're feeling. Can you hear me any better? Just like what kind of was the conversation like with them that you had to have when everything started getting canceled?
Yeah, wow. Okay, that's a loaded question. Let me try to keep this answer somewhat brief. As decisions were being made about the NCAA, not the NCAA tournament, the SEC men's basketball tournament, things were happening very quickly. The only person I was able to speak with is Coach Pearl, just kind of give him a heads up on where we were. He and I had been communicating a couple times a day just so that we could be in lockstep and he could be updated. I did not get a chance to talk to the team. It just so happened that as I was walking back to the hotel, they were loading the bus heading to the airport. And I just jumped on the bus and just I apologized to them about the circumstances and the events, but also try to help them realize that and recognizing that their frustration, their confusion, all the range of emotions that young people would go through when hearing this type of news, and just said that, our jobs are here to support them. There's going to be a lot more questions than there are answers. And I feel like, 8 days later or so, we still have probably more questions than we have answers. But most importantly, just knowing that they are surrounded by people who care for them, and to continue to utilize those people to help them navigate through these uncharted waters.
Thank you.
Alan, this is Philip again. When you talk about financial things, if football season was disrupted or even didn't happen, how disastrous would that be financially for everybody?
Yeah, let's not talk about that, Philip. No, if we take cues from, and again, I'll kind of refer to Sankey's comments. He's mentioned about being optimistic about playing the upcoming football season and all sports, right? Getting back to some sort of normalcy. I do think that we have to have some conversations about what the world would look like if there wasn't a football season, even though we're planning on playing one. I would say if there wasn't a football season, that would be a sizable financial impact. To what degree, uncertain, but that there would definitely be a sizable impact on our finances if we were not to have a football season.
Alan, this is Mark Murphy.
Mark.
What is happening with the women's basketball program right now? I think they're up to 7 players transferred out or transferring out right now.
Yeah, that's a good question. I know Coach Stoll and I have had some conversations as we kind of went down toward the end of the season. Our primary focus has been on dealing with this crisis, so I don't have a ton of information. So I'll have to get back to you on that.
Are you concerned about the direction of the program? It was the worst record for the team in 50 years.
I don't think anybody expected us to have the type of season that we did last year, coming off of NCAA appearances and one of the best records last season. Again, some of the attention has been turned from specific sporting activities to really this national and global pandemic.
Alan, this is Paul Meyerberg with USA Today.
I'm sorry, who's this again?
I'm sorry?
Who is this again?
This is Paul Meyerberg. I'm a reporter with USA Today. Thank you for taking the time to
Hey, Paul. Thank you.
So I know how early you are and how early the NCAA is in this decision-making process. So it's a very general question because I know you can only provide very broad generalities. But in terms of returning that year of eligibility or more, are you, in favor of, as of right now, extending it to all classes or just seniors? And how much, as you kind of begin to look from a financial perspective, is your answer or your feeling on this question going to be impacted by simply dollars and cents? Because I know how much it would cost Auburn and other schools to supply 4 years, for example, of added eligibility.
Yeah, that's a really good question, Paul. And I think that's a topic that many of us in leadership roles and our coaches have been having that discussion. It's really hard to identify where we're going to go. I think there's arguments that when someone's season has not been completed, there ought to be some consideration for additional eligibility, whether that's seniors or, freshmen through seniors. I think it's still TBD. It's one of those circumstances where you want to do what's in the best interest of the athletes, understanding that we don't have financial clarity. You want to try to make that decision without thinking about finances, but you also have to recognize that there is some financial impact. But I think what's going to drive the decision making from an NCAA perspective and from a campus perspective is really trying to do what's in the best interest of the young people.
Understood. Thank you again for taking the time today, Al.
My pleasure. Thank you. You're welcome.
Alan, this is Jason. This is Jason Caldwell. To add to that question, Major League Baseball's mentioned and has been out there the possibility of not even having a draft. Does that make things even more difficult because the uncertainty that still remains for that particular sport? Because those juniors, guys like Tanner Burns and those guys, I'm sure the coaching staff probably counted on them to be gone. Now without a draft, they may return. Does it throw another wrinkle into that one?
That's a great question, Jason. And I would say we're being thrown wrinkles all the time. I hope that my batting average of hitting a curveball is better as an AD than it was as a player. So we've kind of gotten accustomed to this quote new normal of uncertainty and trying to navigate through the fog, if you will. It does add an element of uncertainty when you're not quite sure what the professional leagues are going to do, when you're not quite sure what Major League Baseball is going to do. Again, we not knowing what they're going to do and understanding that there is lots of discussions on these continuums. And so just because they're talking about it doesn't mean that they're super high on it or that it's imminent. So we're trying to march forward with the best information that we have at the time and make decisions that are in the best interest of our campuses and of our student athletes.
Thanks.
Thank you. Alan, this is Brian again. Sorry to interrupt anybody. I just wanted to ask a little bit more about the football facility. You said you're full steam ahead. Could you update us exactly where you are on that project, and have you selected the site of where to put it?
We have not selected the site yet, Brian. That is in discussion. Our hope is to make a decision by the end of this month.
Alan, this is Tom Green at AL.com. I know a lot of pro sports teams, they've kind of taken the initiative to set up emergency funds for event workers and staffers. Do you know if the athletic department or the university is doing anything similar for staffers that may be working at Plainsman Park or James B. Moore Field?
Sure. The university sent out a statement, it might have been yesterday, that talked about our desire to take care of the people who work at the university. It's a little bit more challenging when there are people who are ancillary to university or athletic department operations. So there's still some things that we have to work through, but we're certainly sensitive to members of all communities, particularly our community, who utilize our activities and our events as a source of income.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hi, this is Gianna Hahn from AL.com.
Hi, Gianna.
How are you doing? So I was wondering how you're managing scholarships both for current students and incoming athletes.
When you say managing scholarships, can you give me some more clarity on what it is that you're asking?
So oftentimes it's like room and board. Are you still paying those for the ones that aren't going to be living here? And are you handing out scholarships for anyone that's deciding to come in the upcoming weeks, or is that something that's been on pause?
So the NCAA has put a moratorium on national signing. So we're not signing new athletes. So right now, our focus is on the student athletes that are currently on campus, and we are still operating normally in terms of our financial support for them as if they were on campus or as if they were in class in Auburn.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Allen, this is Brandon Marcello, 24/7 Sports. I was wondering if you've been able to keep track of the health of your student athletes and if anyone has been directly affected by the coronavirus.
Right. So none of our student athletes have been directly affected, or I guess have had the coronavirus or even been tested or shown symptoms, to my knowledge. The way I'm keeping up with our student athletes and their health is through our medical professionals and through our coaches. And we have conversations with our coaches almost on a daily basis about a wide variety of things, just so that we can all remain in the loop.
Hey, Alan, I got one more question. This is Brian again. Sorry.
Yes, Brian. No problem.
I just wanted to check to see if any other construction projects like Plainton Park or Jamie Moore Field or the Jordan Hare East Suites, are they going to be delayed any change in their timeline?
Well, as of right now, there's no change in the timeline. If we defer to our university position on capital projects, they're still moving forward. Again, things change so rapidly that it's hard to tell what tomorrow's going to bring. But we'll continue to press forward as long as we're able to.
Alan, phone again.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Hi, Simone.
How have you been spending your time with your daughters, with your family? I'm sure cooped up, but like a word for folks maybe out there bored? Anything that you would suggest?
I don't suggest them living my lifestyle. That's for sure. It has been conference call after conference call. I told someone this the other day. Since Wednesday morning, so a week ago Wednesday, I have been either in a meeting or on a phone call from about 8 a.m. to arguably 7 or 8 o'clock at night. So my kids, although I'm home, they know I'm back in the office having conversations like these or on conference calls. I don't get a chance to see them that much. I am home for dinner, which is great. And I'm home enough to tell them to take out the trash and do some of the normal chores. What I would love to be doing when I have time is really just spending time. I think just being home helps them. It drives my wife crazy, but at least it helps my kids, I think.
Thanks, Alan.
You're welcome.
Hey, Alan, Scott Carpenter with WLTV.
I'm sorry, who is this again?
Scott Carpenter with WLTV.
Hey, Scott.
Hey, speaking of kind of that same sort of thing, how you're working remotely, have you been in contact with coaches that are working remotely about challenges that they might be facing? Or are you debating supplying them more resources to work remotely?
That's a great question, Scott. And number one, let me thank you also. I know that we depend on news to get our information, and people like you, I think, deserve a round of applause for continuing to do your jobs so that we can continue to be informed. So let me say that first. Our coaches, I think, work remotely regardless. They're constantly recruiting. They're constantly doing. They're constantly traveling. So that is not the issue for us. They have the resources that they need to conduct business in a new normal world, if you will. The biggest challenge, I think, from their perspective would be just ensuring that the student athletes are attacking their academic pursuits with the same vigor as they would on campus. Young people have idle minds, and we want to keep them engaged to the best of our ability.
Thanks, Alan.
You're welcome.
Alan, this is Philip again. Are they able to work with tutors and those things? I'm talking about the athletes at home the same way they do, or similar to the way they do when they're on campus?
Well, I need a tutor also, Philip. So let's keep me in that equation. They
All
are.
right.
They are. Our main responsibilities go to the health, safety, and well-being of our student athletes, and then we start to broaden that. So their academic pursuits obviously are critically important, with university still conducting that aspect of campus. So all academic support that we can provide them remotely, we are working to do. Our academic advisors and anybody who works in our academic services office deserves a pat on the back, because this is not something that is obviously normal. We're all operating in a non-normal environment or a new normal environment, and doing things remotely, as I think all of us can agree, although it has some benefits, creates some additional challenges. So we've got staff who are working like crazy to continue to provide the same level of expertise to our student athletes as if they were on campus.
Hey, this is
Allen,
Gianna
this is
again.
Ladies,
Gianna, you go ahead.
Thank you. I was wondering, what are you doing about the upkeep of facilities during this time, especially things like fields, which can't just be left alone?
Are you talking about pollen removal?
Yeah, and things with fields in good
right.
condition.
No, exactly. So our facility staff continues to be engaged in maintaining our facilities. Again, there's so much of our attention gets paid to student athletes and coaches, and sometimes we forget that there are people behind the scenes who have to take care of the facilities or manage, the business aspect of it. There's a ton of people who, I shouldn't say a ton, let me rephrase that. There are select people who are managing our facilities, our fields, and keeping them manageable, and simply just waiting for us to be able to return.
Allen, this is Rex Castillo from WRBL. I know that sometimes with the burden of leadership, it's also important to try and keep morale up, especially with coaches and with student athletes. Just how have you tried to navigate that kind of challenge with all these student athletes who suddenly seem just their college dreams taken away, and just this crazy situation?
Yeah, that's an excellent question, Rex. I had a couple conversations with our coaches yesterday and in the prior days, and sometimes it's just asking them, how are they doing? When you think about people in leadership positions, we are tasked with, as you said, keeping the morale up, knowing that we're exhausted. And I think about, my wife and I were just having this conversation about Dr. Fauci and how he's been on every media platform saying the same thing over and over again. Who's taking care of him, right? Who's asking him? Who's checking on his well-being? So part of our responsibility, and this isn't unusual for our department, is we are obligated to one another, and we're obligated to make sure that each one of us is being thought about and is being taken care of. Something simple as just sending a text to somebody saying thank you, are you okay? Or funny memes always gets people to laugh a little bit. And so trying to find some calming times, or something that'll just put a smile on your face is really important.